Guys, we are back. It's the Blue Bloods, bringing you guys another loaded episode full of college football content. We start the episode by talking about which school deserves the title of RBU, and then we debate which coach deserves the distinction as the greatest college football coach of all time. We then speculate and debate about the biggest what-if moments in college football history, and we wrap it all up by giving our take on which wide receivers actually deserve to be taken with the first-round pick and which players are just completely overrated. It's about that time, so let's kick it off. As we covered last episode, ESPN released their rankings for position U for every position since the start of the BCS era, which is about 1998, 1999. We ranked quarterback U, and it was a little controversial. Brandon, doesn't know what he's talking about. He realized that Sam Darnold was not that good. So in our second installment of our rankings, we're going to stick with, offense today and debate who is running back U. ESPN, I don't know why, ranked Alabama as running back university, followed by Wisconsin, LSU, Oklahoma, and Miami. And, just to reiterate the rules for everyone who might not have heard the last episode, you can only take into account players from 1999 until this past year when deciding which team deserves this, honor. So, Brandon, I'll let you start again, man. Which school is running back U and why?
I'll be honest with you, man. I cannot disagree with this list anymore. Alabama certainly doesn't deserve to be at the top of this list. But I did agree with one part, and that's that they had Wisconsin at number 2. They should have had them at number 1. Wisconsin, when you think about this school, what do you think of? You think of immaculate running backs, and you think of incredible offensive lines, right? Right. So I was answering for everybody out there, by the way. I guess you're wondering what was going on right there. But I could go through the list of Wisconsin running backs, and I just probably wouldn't stop for half an hour. And that list is topped off by most recently Jonathan Taylor, who Zach listed on his all-decade team as the best running back in the past decade over people like Saquon Barkley. And while I don't think that is necessarily true, I do think that Wisconsin has just, a stable of running backs. Ron Day, Melvin Gordon, Monty Ball, just to name a few. Just running backs who did their thing in college and then went on and didn't stop there, but they went and did their thing in the league. And so, to me, it wasn't even up for debate. Wisconsin is running back U.
Yeah, literally, in case you guys don't know, Ron Dane, who played from 96 to 99, so he just makes the cut by 1 year, actually leads the NCAA in career rushing yards with over 7,000. Second place is at 6,500, and that's Tony Dorsett from Pitt. Jonathan Taylor is 6 on the list, so I don't think you can go wrong with a school that had 2 top 6 running backs ever. That's pretty tough. And then, you mentioned Monty Ball. He's in the top 20. Yeah. So 3 running backs from this, decade, from this debate, I guess the past 2 decades, are in the top 20 in rushing yards. That's, I might have to give you this one, but, I'm in grad school right now, as most of you guys who listen know. I need to talk to the statistician who ran these stats because I'm upset. I'm sure Brandon's upset too because I know he would have this team on his list. All these schools on the list did have solid running backs. So Wisconsin, great job. Miami, Alabama, all have legendary running backs. But how did my pick for RBU not even make the list, guys? So before I give y'all my team, Brandon, I'm going to give you 2 comparisons. We got player A versus player B, player C versus player D. So okay. I'm going to tell you some stats. I want you to tell me which school these stats represent and which player from that school it represents. So for player A, we have 3,500 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry, 42 touchdowns, but this player only had 1 season over 1,000 yards rushing. Player B, had 4,700 yards rushing in his career, 6.3 yards per carry, 44 touchdowns, and 3 seasons over 1,000 yards rushing. Which player are you taking?
Player B, and it's not close.
Not even close, right? Yeah. Do you know who player A was, Brandon?
No idea.
Derrick Henry from Alabama.
Okay, here we
So
go.
you just took another player who, by the way, did not win a Heisman Trophy and didn't even start for his team all 3 years over a Heisman Trophy winner who apparently ESPN is hanging their hat on Alabama being RBU. That player B, Brandon, was Nick Chubb.
Okay, like Nick Chubb, great player.
From Georgia. I outed myself, guys. I'm picking Georgia as RBU. I mean, I just gave Nick Chubb, who arguably isn't even the top running back from Georgia in the past decade, and he's better than probably the best running back that Alabama's produced. So we're going to have another comparison, Brandon. One's going to be from Alabama, one's going to be from Georgia. So first we got player C, 3,500 yards rushing, only 4.9 yards per carry, 41 touchdowns, 2 seasons over 1,000 yards rushing. That's respectable. I'll take it. Player D had 3,600 yards rushing with a whopping 6.1 yards per carry. They had less touchdowns with 33, but they also had 2 seasons over 1,000 yards rushing. Which player are you taking?
That one's tough. I
That
feel
was
like you're wanting me to say player. You're wanting me to say player D. I'm gonna have to go with player A on this, or player C on this one.
I was about to say, can't even get the letters right, my guy. Well, you just took Sean Alexander in college over Sony Michel.
Sean Alexander. I would do it again. What a stud! What a stud in college.
I don't think. I mean, this is a lot closer comparison. But I'm still taking Sony Michel. Sony Michel played less full seasons than Sean Alexander, had more yards rushing, and if you add the receiving touchdowns in, Sony Michel beats him in touchdowns. I don't see how Alabama beats Georgia in this list, and how is Georgia not even on the list? I still want to focus on that. I mean, Brandon has already labeled me the biggest Auburn fan of all time. How is Auburn 10 and Georgia's not even on the list?
Listen, when I saw that Auburn was number 10 on this list, I laughed. I won't lie to you, I laughed. I mean, it wasn't only them. It was other schools too.
Yeah, they have good options. I mean, you had Carnell Williams, Ronnie Brown, Trey Mason, Kerryon Johnson, et cetera, but man, I mean, the fact that Georgia's not on this list makes this a fireable offense to me. Whoever made this list, ESPN needs to cut the contract. Come sign me. I will make sure this does not happen again. Brandon, I'm going to list some running backs that rushed for over 1,000 yards in this time period that we just listed out here, which is the BCS. You have Nick Chubb. You like Nick Chubb, right? You would take Nick Chubb on. You're an LSU fan. You would take Nick Chubb at LSU.
Oh, yeah. Not even close.
You would take Sony Michel.
Yes, for sure.
You would take DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, duh.
Yeah. How about Noshawn Marino? People forget he was the best running back in the SEC from 06 to 07, and before his college career got ended a little bit short. You also got Thomas Brown, who had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. Elijah Holyfield, who is in the NFL now. You also have Keith Marshall, who led the SEC in rushing as a freshman before, some things happened, and the list goes on and on. Like Brandon said with Wisconsin, I can spend all day here telling you guys the Georgia running backs that deserve to be here. Georgia also was the school that had the most running back starters in the NFL last year. Yeah. And they're not running back you?
They should be.
I don't understand. I mean, so Georgia's had 1,000-yard rusher every single year since 2014, and that streak was ended. Like, that streak, didn't start sooner because Todd Gurley tore his ACL 10 games into the season and was 40 yards away from rushing for 1,000 yards.
Yeah, very tough look.
That's horrible, man. I mean, and so the reason I'm picking Georgia over, Alabama or Wisconsin or some of these other schools is I don't think there's a school that was as deep as Georgia was with their talent and ability. I mean, I just can't. That whole list from Nick Chubb to Keith Marshall is just elite running backs. And a lot of these players were at Georgia at the same time, so their stats were even hindered because Nick Chubb and Sony Michel were on the same team, sharing the same amount of carries, and that's not even including DeAndre Swift, who is the third string running back.
Right.
That's just outrageous, guys. And let me say this. I listed my top 5. Alabama and Wisconsin are 2 and 3 for me. Let's not discount the great talent of running backs Alabama and Wisconsin has had. I just don't see how you can pick Alabama over Georgia when the two top players from those schools you're picking Georgia's player. Nick Chubb has had a better college career than Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, and this isn't to discount Alabama necessarily. That might be my favorite thing in the world to do, but they aren't RBU, dude. Not in my opinion. I mean, I would put Wisconsin 1, obviously. Georgia's ahead of Alabama to me. And there may be some other schools there. I'm not going to go too far into detail. The segment isn't talking about Alabama because neither one of us chose them, but I don't know how they made the top of this list.
No, and I want to talk about also Miami being top 5. I mean,
they were number 5. Yeah,
they were strong in the early 2000s, guys. Like the ESPN list: Edgerrin James, Willis McGahee, Clinton Portis, Frank Gore. But after that, I mean, Brandon, can you name an elite Miami running back in the last 10 years?
No, cannot.
So
unless you ask me like week 1 of the podcast, then I would probably tell you the running back from last year because he kind of did me dirty. But that's beside the point.
So are we not taking into account the entire time? Because Georgia, Alabama, Wisconsin has a player in all, almost every 3-4 years that deserves to be on this list. Yeah. So how is Miami? And let's just go. LSU is up there too, and LSU has good running backs throughout, this era. I mean, if including Leonard Fournette, Darius Geis, and I mean, come on, man, that's just
Kevin Falk, Jacob Hester. Yeah, pretty good.
Keep going. We can keep going all day with these. So,
all day.
So you see the trend here is Wisconsin, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. You can just keep going naming elite running backs. Miami, you have to stop around 2005. Yeah, so I don't think they deserve to be on this list at all. Personally, yeah. I mean, it's just because there are schools at the bottom like Pitt. Pitt had a more consistent running back stable than Miami did throughout. If we're looking at the whole BCS era,
they did. Yeah, that's an understatement. They for sure did.
Yeah, I mean, so I just don't see Alabama or Miami deserving of where they were ranked on this list. And the reason that we were so excited for this segment is how did Georgia not make the list, guys? That is the sole storyline. We can change this, question for this debate topic from which school is RBU to where is Georgia ESPN, because we need answers. I need to see the stats. I need to see the results. Where was Georgia? Were they 11th? 12th? Like, I need to know what happened. Did you forget to put them on there? Did you forget to include them in the data set? I mean, I need to see this equation, man, because this is one heck of an equation.
Yeah, they had an intern who worked for Georgia Tech, and he was just like, yeah, we can't have Georgia on here.
That's not out the realm of possibility if we're being all honest here. Georgia Tech's a great school, guys. I'm just saying, but we're gonna go ahead, move on to the next topic. You guys have been voting just out of y'all's mind right now. Hopefully y'all don't piss Brandon off again, but we provided you guys with some March Sadness brackets, due to the cancellation of March Madness. Already, you guys have claimed 01 Miami Hurricanes is the greatest college football team of all time. Brandon had a stroke. Then to add on, to give him a heart attack on top of that, you guys voted Bo Jackson from Auburn, the greatest college football player of all time. But now voting is winding down for the greatest college football coach of all time. And today, as this episode is released, the voting will be ending, and either Nick Saban or Paul Bear Bryant will be crowned the greatest college football coach of all time. So it's time to give you guys our opinion. This time we released it as the poll was ending, so we really can't sway y'all's votes here. But Brandon, who do you consider the greatest college football coach of all time, and why?
Um, it hurts. I'm gonna have to go with Nick Saban. And I don't know how you don't. I don't know how you don't go with this coach. Nick Saban has had one of the most incredible coaching careers, or he has had the most incredible coaching career of anyone who's ever coached college football, anyone who's ever stepped on that field. Um, and it's not close. And I'll be honest, guys, if you disappoint me here, because this is just the Bammers. The Bammers are the only ones here uh, that have anything to prove. And I don't know if they're going to try to go with like their heritage or whatever. I mean, Zach, you and I both grew up in South Alabama. And I know that you remember that phase in like the late 2000s where girls just wore houndstooth like it was their religion. I mean, you remember that, right?
I hated every second of it.
Yeah, it was the worst. It was disgusting. But they loved some Paul Bear Bryant, and that was when Nick Saban was the head coach of the Crimson Tide. That was even after he won his first national championship there in 2009. Anyway, that's beside the point. Don't vote for Bear Bryant, guys. If you disappoint me again and you vote Bear Bryant, I understand that we put him at number 2 on the list, and I don't know why, looking back at it, because I don't vote on these polls, but if I did, he didn't get my vote. He would not have gotten my vote in the Final Four. Bobby Bowden deserved it a million times more than Paul Bear Bryant, but that's a whole different discussion. Don't disappoint me here, guys. Pick Nick Saban, do the right thing, and that hurt my throat to say. Nick Saban, overall, I mean, let's just talk about his record. Since he has been coaching college football, has only lost 65 football games. 65, Zach. That's compared to the 248 that he's won. Over 314 games, and he has lost only 65 of those. He has a 79% winning percentage. He is 15-10 in bowl games, which not terrible by any means. I'll take 15-10.
I mean, Bear Bryant was 15-12-2.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just looking at sheer numbers, you have to go with Bear Bryant. That's over his 24-year career, which shocking to me, by the way. He coached at Toledo. Didn't know that. That's good to know.
You didn't know he coached at Toledo?
Years, no, no idea.
Fair enough.
No idea. Is Toledo real? No one knows. We'll figure it out next episode. He went 9-2 there. This guy.
Yeah, in the one season, he was the co-champion of the MAC.
What a year for Nick Saban. He was their head coach in 1990, and then just didn't have another head coaching gig until 95.
Well, he went to the Browns.
People do forget that he went to the Browns. He also went to Miami after LSU and pledged that he would never coach at the University of Alabama. Yet here we are.
I mean, do you know who the head coach of the Browns that hired him was? Right?
Yeah, it was Bill Belichick. I know that.
Yeah,
I watched the HBO documentary.
I don't think you could turn that down. Like you're at Toledo and Bill Belichick comes and asks you to get a job. Like I'm taking it in a heartbeat.
That's pretty sick. His second stint in the NFL didn't go as well, but yeah,
that's another story. That's another story. Hang on, time out. We're going down that hum out. Hang on. We're talking what ifs next segment. This is relevant. The biggest what if is if the owner of the Miami Dolphins doesn't tell Nick Saban that he's stupid for wanting to sign Drew Brees, because Drew Brees and the Dolphins were about to agree on a contract because that's who Saban wanted. And the owner decided to sign Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees, which led Drew Brees to go to the Saints. So the Dolphins technically should have got Drew Brees with Nick Saban as their head coach. And we're talking about multiple Super Bowls for the Dolphins rather than the Super Bowl for the Saints. But continue, my bad. That was a whole rant. You guys don't know this. I'm a Dolphins fan. That is my biggest nightmare, is that happened. Who looks at the tape and says, you know what, Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees? Get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that, actually. My concluding concluding words on this segment are just going to be, who dat, don't disappoint me.
I want y'all to disappoint them. I'm also going with Nick Saban. I've said I don't even know, probably since 2015, that Nick Saban is the greatest head coach of all time. I mean, to see what he's done at Alabama after seeing where Alabama was right before he took over the job. I mean, people forget how dark the Mike Shula days really were for Alabama. I mean, they weren't getting recruits. They weren't getting fans in the seats. I mean, there was no hope. And Nick Saban comes in, takes it on the chin from Louisiana Monroe, and then he goes on to win multiple national championships. And
Yeah.
and if it wasn't for Dabo Swinney building up a powerhouse at Clemson, I mean, Nick Saban has what is it, 8 national championships. Bear Bryant has 7. But listen, guys, we're not comparing stats here, and here's why. Bear Bryant didn't have any scholarship limits.
Yeah.
So Bear Bryant could just take everybody else away from, I mean, he could take all the best recruits and just hoard them to himself. Nick Saban only has, 25 scholarships every year for the new recruiting class.
Right.
Bear Bryant had unlimited. So I think that automatically disqualifies him. I mean, Brandy, we've seen the Alabama recruiting dominance. How bad would it be if there was no scholarship limits?
Oh, it'd be tough. It would
It,
be miserable for me.
yeah, because he would take all the players from Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and Alabama would have a roster of 200 of the best athletes in the country, and they'd win the Olympics every year in whatever you wanted to.
The
It would be
Olympics.
it would be ridiculous. It would be the greatest collection of athletes we've ever seen. Um, you know, Bear Bryant, he coached at Maryland, Kentucky, A&M, and Alabama. That's great. That's fine. But he only coached one season at Maryland, 6-2. That's great. And he did win a national championship with Kentucky. Outrageous in my opinion. But the NCAA actually doesn't recognize that national championship that a lot of people don't know. So really and truly, Bear Bryant only has 6.
Yeah.
So it is tied. Nick Saban is going to win another one. I'm just here to say, Brandon, you're an LSU fan. I'm an Auburn fan. Nick Saban's winning another one. And
Probably, yeah.
as sad as it is, he is going to win another one. And, we're going to get into it in the next segment. But if Nick Saban, stays at LSU, I mean, he wins multiple championships at LSU. I mean, the team that he left behind when he took the Dolphins job was stacked with just pure talent, guys. I mean, people always point at his Alabama dynasty. His LSU dynasty was just as impressive.
Oh my gosh, he was only there for 5 years. He was there for 5 seasons, and in those 5 seasons, I mean, his best seasons, I mean, were 10-3, 13-1, and 12. I mean, I'm sorry, and 9-3. I mean, between those, he went 8-5, 8-4 at LSU. I mean, imagine if he would have stayed there. I mean, like you said, he won that national championship with LSU in 2003, and then there is a reason that LSU won the national championship in 2007. And as much as I want to give that to Les Miles, I don't know that I truly can.
There was some leftover talent that he could build on top of.
Right. And there was a culture that he built.
1,000%. And the thing that I think separates Saban from Bear Bryant is just I mean, yeah, Bear Bryant had a big presence and everything, but I mean, when you think back to old coaches, I mean, there's a section of the country who's like, oh, Joe Paterno was the best coach. Oh, Bobby Bowden was the best head coach. I mean, looking back in history, there's a lot of coaches that just seem to always be in the way. But I mean, I don't think you can ask anyone nowadays who's the best coach in recent history without Nick Saban coming up. There's some delusional Clemson fans that think Dabo Swinney is better than Nick Saban right now. No, it ain't happening. Nick Saban, number 1 all time. It's already outrageous enough that Dabo beat Newt Rockne in the first round. You guys need to educate yourselves.
I got something to say. Because I've already been disappointed, and that's why you can't disappoint me again. I've been disappointed 2 polls in a row. This is the 3rd one. I've already been disappointed, and we're just now getting around to the championship. You voted Dabo Swinney over Newt Rockne. Do you know who Newt Rockne is? Go back, look at the tape. Well, I don't know if there's tapes, but
There's
go
not.
back.
He coached. He he coached 1918 to 1930.
Yeah, yeah. Go read a book or something, educate yourself, and then come
That could
back
be
and
the
vote again.
problem. That could be the
I'm gonna
problem.
give you. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I can barely read, so we know Clemson fans can't. But
Guys, Newt
yeah,
Newt Rockne literally was the coach who specialized in the forward pass. Brandon, how many games do you think Newt Rockne lost in his career?
I can't. At one point, I did know this. I think it was very few. He also didn't
12.
coach for like a super long time. 12 games. Yeah, he coached for like
He,
12 years though, right?
he but he won over 100 games.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's outrageous, guys. And he won 3 national championships too. And yes, this was a different, time and everything, but this is ridiculous, guys. 12 losses, and you help popularize like the current football that we watch today. You guys disrespect the elders, and it's ridiculous. Uh, you know,
Like I said, pick up a book, read, read,
go
read
watch.
some like do something.
Go watch
Go
some
listen
Herschel
to
Walker tape while you're at it.
go, go listen to the Notre Dame fight song, and then come back. Tell me that doesn't fire you up. Let's go. Not even a
I don't,
Notre Dame fan. It fires me up.
dude. Sometimes I don't even know if Notre Dame fans know that Newt Rockne coached for them because like Lou Holtz went really far in our bracket, but Newt Rockne got knocked out in the first round.
So stupid.
Like y'all are
Man,
supporting Lou Holtz? Come on.
I love our fans. I don't even think it's the listeners who were to blame for that.
No,
I
we
get on
love.
the listeners a lot, but we have some people who don't listen that we gotta talk to. I'm going to make like a Facebook post.
Yeah, if you don't listen to the
Ridiculous.
podcast, you cannot vote anymore. That's it. I'm putting my foot down.
How are they
As,
going to hear this? How are they going to hear that?
fair enough, guys. We're gonna move on to another segment here, our third segment of the episode, and this one is gonna be really unconventional. I don't think we've done anything like this, but ESPN set the stage, releasing some of the most interesting what if scenarios from college football history. This ranged from coaching changes that could have, should have, or would have happened to recruiting to controversial calls in some of the biggest games. We figured it would be an interesting debate to discuss some of these biggest what ifs and what could have happened and what really should have happened in some of these. We picked 3 of the biggest, more recent moments. We apparently know y'all don't know y'all's history, so we kept it pretty recent for you guys. And we picked some interesting scenarios that really would have shifted the way college football is as we know it. So, Brandon, I'll start this one off. First, we're going to have one of the bigger questionable what ifs is what if Steve Spurrier actually made the cut to be LSU's head coach before he was offered the role at Florida?
Oh my God. Then LSU wouldn't have gone through that dark period known as the 1990s, I guess. Um, it would have been a much more
It was
delightful
tough.
time in LSU
It was
history.
it was really, really tough for you guys there for a while.
Yeah, and I hate Florida, and thank God I was born in '96, so I didn't even really have to endure this. But yeah, I don't know if I would have made it out alive. But I mean, look at what he did with Florida. I mean, it was just absurd. He started out at Duke, obviously. Well, I say obviously. I hope you guys know that. He started out at Duke, coached at Florida, went on to South Carolina, and then where'd he go? He went to the Orlando Apollos. But we're not here to talk about the AAF right now. We're here to talk about college football. But he coached at Florida for 11 years. And over those 11 years, I'd say he did pretty good. How about you, Zach? He made a bowl game every single season. His worst season, he won 9 games. That was his worst season at Florida. It was a 9-win season. Um, man, if he would have been at LSU, that would have been.
I mean,
Obviously, actually, I'm not even gonna. I won't even whine about this. If he would have been at LSU, then LSU probably would have never gotten Nick Saban, which was a pretty high moment for
I was
LSU
about to
fans.
say the same thing because um, Spurrier didn't leave for the Redskins till 2001,
Yeah, we don't
and
say that word.
yeah, so that
It's our words.
yeah, he didn't leave till 2001, and that would have put them right. They would have missed on Nick Saban, and who knows who they would have hired after that. But you know, people forget how good Steve Spurrier really is as a coach. Like, to be all on, like, he was the 15th seed in our best coaches of all time bracket, and no one I mean, he had to go up against Paul Bryant, in the first round. A little unfair, but he won 6 SEC championships and a national title at Florida.
Yeah,
That's that and LSU suffered 8 losing seasons
it was a tough
in that
decade.
same time. I
Yeah,
it
grunge was in the '90s, and LSU fans just kept living that. I mean, it was in the early '90s, but LSU fans just lived that until like 2001.
dude,
Don't even know where to go with that.
no, I really don't. But I mean, LSU gets probably one because at the time I really think LSU had potential, man. I mean, I think Steve Spurrier could have recruited the heck out of Louisiana, and I really do think he would have brought a national championship or more to LSU if he would have actually took that job.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to argue against that. I mean, you look at his track record at Florida during that time. Like I said, his worst season was a 9-win season. Uh, it's crazy. I mean, if you look at the bowl games he went to with Florida, I mean, he went to the Sugar Bowl, like five different times for Florida. He went to the Citrus Bowl several times, the Fiesta Bowl. Um, the Orange Bowl, the Gator Bowl. I mean, he was in big bowl games. It's not like he was just barely making it. I mean, that's what you get with a 9-win season. You have a 9-win season. He had a couple 12-win seasons, an 11-win season, and a ton of 10-win seasons. It's just if he would have been. I don't even think it's just LSU. I think if he would have been almost anywhere else in the country, especially any other SEC program, he would have done the same things. Imagine if he would have gone to Tennessee at this time with how good they already were.
You get Steve
Could you imagine
Spurrier,
that?
Peyton Manning.
Yes. Oh my God.
I mean, you're gonna laugh. The other school that passed on Steve Spurrier was Mississippi State.
That's
That's
tough.
that's
That could have
that's a
saved
tough
them
look.
from like
That's
that
a
could have
tough
saved
look.
them from a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you want to cry a little bit, some of the other coaches LSU passed up in this coaching search. Oh, you're about to cry, man. Mac Brown.
Yeah.
That would have worked. Um, yeah. How about Mike Shanahan?
It's pretty good coach.
Yeah, two-time Super Bowl champion, Mike Shanahan. Yeah, pretty
Pretty
good.
good. Yeah. It's
Um,
okay.
Frank Beamer,
Okay.
also really good. I mean, you interview Steve Spurrier, Mike Shanahan, Frank Beamer, and Mac Brown, and you end up hiring Mike Archer. LSU,
Yeah.
you really messed this one up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's in the past. We're not going to talk about it.
And the bigger
Oh,
disrespect is Florida's athletic director came from LSU and was the one trying to get LSU to hire Spurrier, and then was just hired him anyway.
yeah. It's a bad time.
It's
And you know what? Before the podcast, Zach posed this question to me as, "What if Steve Spurrier didn't go to Florida? Didn't know it was just going to be Brandon. Let's talk about LSU not hiring Steve Spurrier." So I'll be honest, this is really catching me off guard.
I mean, my bad. I thought you knew they interviewed him, and it was like the big thing that they passed on Steve Spurrier. But
I knew that they interviewed him. I didn't realize that this is what the segment.
but
Keeping me on my toes. I like it.
we'll move on to another one that involves LSU.
Oh, good.
The second what if USC made the right decision and kept Ed Orgeron as their head coach after his stint as an interim head coach in 2013?
Man, oh man, that would have been something else. And they should have. I'm glad
Yes,
he's at LSU. I
yes.
really am. But good God, they should have kept Coach O. That was what a mistake. Obviously he only had the one season at USC in 2013. He finished the season out 6-2, which, by the way, is the same record he had when he had to finish out the season at LSU in 2016. But before that, he's a good coach now, and you probably knew he was a good coach then by what he did. But his track record before that wasn't great, Zach. I mean, with Ole Miss, what do we see out of him? We saw 2 3-win seasons and a 4-win season. and then he was fired. You know, and that's why he went on to be a coordinator after that. You know, he was no longer a head coach. Um, and obviously coaches grow and just as people do. Um, and I think that's what happened. I think there was a serious period of growth for Coach Orgeron between his firing in '07 or after the '07 season, and in 2013 when he took over at USC as the interim head coach. And they didn't keep him. That's not really out of the usual. Most of the time, when you hire an interim coach, that's just what they are. They're an interim, and you can go talk to, just take your choice of LSU fans in 2016 when he was the interim there, and ask them who wanted to keep Coach O as their head coach long term, and you would have gotten like at least 65% of people saying no, no way. I want a new head coach. I want to go look for somebody else. But LSU ended up keeping him, and look where they're at now. They went 15-0 this past season, won a national championship, and you can't give all the credit to him, but I think you have to give some of it to him. Just the culture that he's created here in Baton Rouge. But if he would have stayed at USC, I really think that with the talent, with the type of recruits that USC has been reeling in, except for this past season, this past recruiting cycle with Clay Helton as the iffy head coach, man, there is some serious talent coming out of Southern California. And I really think with the type of recruiter he is, he could have taken full advantage of that. And USC would be scary good right now.
1,000%. I mean, if you look back, I mean, you say like Orgeron's, I guess, pass wasn't great, but that USC team was really, really struggling. And, when Lane Kiffin got fired and Orgeron stepped in, Orgeron led that team to a 6-2, final record under him, and they beat the fourth-ranked Stanford team at that time, who was under Harbaugh, I believe, or no, it might have been under Shaw at that point. But they beat a Stanford team that was really good. They were top 4 in the country. And if you remember, like, they stormed the field, they were interviewing Orgeron. He said he wanted to be there forever, and he said he had an uneasy feeling after he was let go that he was just a stopgap. And it came out later that they only let him go because he didn't represent the USC, I guess, culture or the USC values. And I think that was just disappointing, if you ask me. I mean, Coach Ed Orgeron deserved, for me, he deserved that job. And it was politics that sent him out. And really and truly, USC got what they deserved. I mean, they hired, I believe it was Steve Sarkisian, right after, and he didn't make it. And then they hired Clay Helton, and look where that got them.
Not bad last season, but obviously there's repercussions.
Yeah, and I mean,
and go look at the recruiting class right now if you don't believe me that there's repercussions.
Exactly, and look at LSU's recruiting class.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you think about it, I mean, if you put Ed Orgeron at USC, in case you guys don't remember, do you remember where Tua Tagovailoa wanted to go coming out of high school?
Yep, obviously.
USC. I would bet money. I'd bet this entire podcast that Tua Tagovailoa would be a USC Trojan if Coach Orgeron was at USC.
Yeah, honestly, and if Coach O wasn't at LSU this past season, who wouldn't have been there? Joe Burrow wouldn't have been there, and Joe Brady wouldn't have been there, and this team. I mean, LSU wouldn't be what they are right now if it wasn't for Coach O. And that's not to say, hey, he's the greatest college football coach, by any means, or even close to the greatest of all time or whatever. But he is one great coach, and that USC really missed out on.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so this is my conspiracy theory, guys. It may or may not be true. I personally think Dave Aranda would be the head coach of LSU right now if Coach Ed Orgeron stayed at USC.
He seriously might be.
I think he would.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how you argue against that. It makes a lot of sense.
Because I think they would give him the job over Emzinger or any of the offense was struggling so bad. How could you justify giving the offensive coordinator or any of the offensive coaches a job? Dave Aranda is the hottest name, in, I guess, the defensive coaching. So why wouldn't you give Aranda the job? And I think another really good name, I actually think like Kevin Steele would have been an option too, because Kevin Steele had ties and he was only in his first year as Auburn's defensive coordinator after leaving LSU. They could have reached back out to him. So I think Aranda and Steele could have been really big options here for LSU if this would have turned out differently, because they really gave Orgeron the shot because of his head coaching experience. But
Yeah.
if he's at USC, I mean, I don't think he's leaving USC for like LSU right off the bat. So especially if he's having success, and I think it would have changed the trajectory for almost everybody, because if you remember, I mean, Tua changed the culture at Alabama about what a quarterback should be, and I don't think they reached the heights they did with Tua if they didn't have, because if you look at it, they would have lost the national championship to Georgia. Jalen Hurts would have had to stay in. So they lose that game, and that affects Saban's legacy. And I mean, I think this what if scenario has some of the far-reaching effects. I mean, because if you remember, USC hired Steve Sarkisian from Washington, which allowed the Washington to hire Chris Peterson, who eventually led them to the playoffs.
Right.
And so it had far-reaching effects for Washington, USC, Tua, which led to Alabama, which back to LSU, which back to Georgia. How are we looking at Georgia if Kirby Smart wins the national championship in his first year?
Oh, man.
With a true freshman quarterback?
Yeah, man.
Or I guess his second year with a true freshman quarterback. I mean, come on, man. I mean, Kirby Smart becomes the hottest coach, in the country, even over Dabo Swinney. I mean, I think that this would have been one of the biggest things, and it's a shame that USC allowed politics to get in the way, just because of the way Orgeron looks, talks, whatever it may have been. And I think it's the way he talks, because people in California could not have understood him when he talks. But it is a shame, though.
In Louisiana, they run like subtitles underneath when he speaks sometimes. So if
Really?
you do that in Louisiana, yeah, it's you shouldn't have to do that. I think it offends some people. It offends me. I know that.
That's tough.
Ridiculous. If you live here, you should know.
Yeah, you should be able to understand them. But we got one more scenario for you guys. This one is really, really recent, and it's, what if Justin Fields would have stuck with his commitment to Penn State over Georgia in 2018?
Man, I like these what ifs. Man, first of all, Penn State legitimately might have won the national championship.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Like this past season, could you imagine this Penn State team from last year with the defense they had, with KJ Hamler catching passes from Justin Fields? Oh my God! In his second season there, that's crazy, man. And that's just looking at the direct effects. I mean, there's obviously indirect effects that, there's no way I could ever process those. But the direct effects would be Penn State is in the college football playoff and might have a national championship right now.
Yeah, I mean, also, I just want to throw this out. Do you know what school offered Justin Fields like first?
No.
Harvard.
I should. Harvard? Yeah, they were out on top of
Harvard. Yeah, they were ready, bro. And I mean, people forget Fields was the number 1 ranked recruit in the 2018 class. This was over Trevor Lawrence.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah, so like Justin Fields was, one of the top recruit of this class, and I mean, he committed to Penn State, and he didn't have a lot of offers at the times, and once he started gaining more, I guess traction or more interest, he decommitted, and he really narrowed down to Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Florida State, USC, and he ended up going to Georgia. I think he regretted it. I think it was more of like a hometown thing. I mean, the kid, he's from Georgia, guys. I mean, he's right outside of Atlanta. So it's right there. And I agree with Brandon. I think Penn State wins the national championship.
Oh
This
yeah,
might sound this might sound crazy, Brandon. I think they make back to back.
really.
I think Penn
Like
State.
next year too.
No, I think Penn State would have made it in 18
You
as a
think they made it
freshman.
last year, huh?
Yes, I do. Because this year, I think they would have made it, but I think they would have lost to LSU. I think
Okay.
LSU just had it made. I mean, it would have probably. I think it would have been a closer game. I mean, I really think that Penn State defense had an argument to be the best one in the country last season. I mean, Micah Parsons is easily probably the best defensive player in the country for this upcoming year. And I mean, we real deal could be talking about Penn State making that. I think Penn State would be the favorite to make the national championship this year.
Yeah,
Justin
I could
Fields is
see. I
coming
mean,
back.
oh, man, it's just and one thing I do know for certain, if nothing else, is that if they didn't make the college football playoff, if they didn't, I mean, even if they lost one fewer game, that one fewer game they would have lost was to Michigan. I don't think there's any chance that Justin Fields only puts up 7 points against Michigan this year.
No,
That game was
out of the
ridiculous.
question. Okay, so I don't think you. So I know a lot of our listeners probably doesn't understand this. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think the reason I think they make it his freshman year, Brandon, do you remember who they had? It would have been
I mean,
Justin Fields and Saquon Barkley.
oh yeah, yep.
Are you? Oh,
That would
and
have been
then your Wildcat quarterback is Trace McSorley, who actually was the starting quarterback for Penn State.
wild.
Bro, it's not even funny. I mean, Penn State was really good in 17. I mean, people forget they were number 2 in the country when they played Ohio State in 2017.
Yeah.
I mean, that game might have been extremely different, guys. Um, you know, it it came down to a 1 point game, and I'm telling you, I'll be the first one to say, if Justin Fields played for Penn State, they win. They were number 2 in the country, guys. I think Penn State had a chance to the national title. Yes, that Clemson team, outrageous, but Penn State can match them up with Justin Fields. I'm sorry. And for Ohio State, I don't know, man. I mean, based on their roster, their quarterback would have either been I think it was Gunnar Hoke would be probably their top option as a quarterback, and I don't think that would have turned out the same. I don't think they're making the championship this year. I really don't. They're not making the playoffs this year, and I think that's replaced by Penn State.
Yeah.
And could they beat Clemson this year? I think they probably could have. And if LSU wasn't so good, I mean, we could be talking about Penn State making multiple national championships, and because I think we covered, what was it, Brandon, an episode or two ago about how good James Franklin really is at coaching football.
Yeah, pretty good coach. Yeah.
I think
so.
People forget. So you got an elite coach, you got an elite quarterback, you got Saquon Barkley. Like that's it. That's all you need. And then you got Micah Parsons on the defensive end. You got Gator Gross Matos at defensive end. And you got all these elite players at every position. And then you got to have teams have to come play in that whiteout at Happy Valley. It's a wrap, guys. Penn State would have been legit. And for Georgia, if they don't get Justin Fields, I think, would Jake Fromm have the pressure? Like, would they have to go get a transfer just in case behind Jake Fromm? Because they really didn't have a deep quarterback room outside of Fields and Fromm.
No, not at all.
And that's why they had to go get a graduate transfer this year. So, and I think this is the funniest thing to think about. So, if Justin Fields doesn't transfer to Ohio State, do you also know who transferred because of his transfer to Ohio State?
Who?
Tate Martell. Does Tate Martell stick at Ohio State and actually get a chance to play?
He may, man.
He
That would have
may.
been crazy.
So Gunnar Hoke or Tate Martell leading Ohio State this year, Brandon. I mean, are you putting money on them? I don't know. I think it might have saved
No.
Jim Harbaugh's job.
Oh man, that was mean.
Jim Harbaugh is wishing this could be the thing. But guys, we're going to move on to our last segment of the day, and it's another draft segment. It's coming real fast. But last episode, we covered one of the more controversial mock drafts of the season. I would say a ridiculous 8 wide receivers were taken in the first round of this mock draft. And this led Brandon and I to question how many wide receivers in this year's draft class really have a first round grade, in our opinion. I think there are 5-star wide receivers headed by Judy and CD Lamb that seem to be consensus first round picks by most experts. But what about the other 3-5 wide receivers that have also appeared in various mock drafts? So, Brandon, how many wide receivers in this year's class would you actually be willing to spend a first round pick on? And which wide receivers are just absolutely overrated?
Oh man, that is it's tough because obviously we sat here this past episode and just trashed that he had 8 wide receivers in his first round. Honestly, I can see arguments where they all have first round talent, but with the way the draft shapes out, you can't. I mean, there's not enough teams that need a wide receiver that desperately. They're going to spend a first round pick on it. There's other things they need. So obviously, I mean, let's go ahead and start out with who I think is the best wide receiver in the draft, Jerry Jeudy. He's going first round, no debate about it. Let's move on. CeeDee Lamb, Zach, we all know how you feel about him, but I think that he deserves a first round pick. I think he will be taken in the first round. Beyond that, I mean, we have Henry Ruggs, Justin Jefferson, and T. Higgins, and that might be where I draw my line. And that's if T. Higgins gets taken instead of Laviska Shenault, who is just getting insane draft grades out of Colorado. So to me, I think that realistically 5 wide receivers get taken in the first round. Now, how many? And that could obviously shift a little bit, but I'm going to stick with it. I think 5 wide receivers get taken.
I mean, so I can see the argument, like I said last episode, about 8 maybe being taken if people panic and they're gonna reach. But personally, it's okay. So let me ask you a question, Brandon. Is it my opinion or is it the 5 receivers that I know someone is gonna take in the first round?
Well, to me, it sounds like you have some insider knowledge. So what's up?
Okay, no, I'm just asking because I don't think CeeDee Lamb is worth a first round pick, but he's going to be taken.
He's going to be taken. Go ahead and, I mean, realistically, how many wide receivers do you think are taken?
I think it's about 6. I mean, I think Judy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and Justin Jefferson are surefire first round picks. But
yeah,
I think it's gonna be 5. I'm gonna go with 5. That's gonna be my number. And the reason I say 5 is because I'm not sure about these later rounds, because T. Higgins I can see being one, but I can also see Denzel Mims out of Baylor being one.
right.
But I don't know if they're both going to be taken because some mock drafts, I like from what I've been reading, a lot of teams are iffy on Higgins, and a lot of teams are either really high or really low on Mims. And I can see it because both of them. Well, I think Higgins. I think a lot of teams are scared that he looks better than he is because of his quarterback and the offense he plays in. I mean, we can't deny that Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent. I think we all on this podcast, me, Brandon, all our listeners out there can agree Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent. And, can he transfer that to a team like, I believe Klatt had him going to the Eagles. Can he transfer that to Carson Wentz? Because personally, I think Trevor Lawrence is a lot better than Carson Wentz. And then Mims, you are in a pass heavy offense that in a conference that doesn't have a lot of defensive backs that are very good. So can this transfer to, can this transfer to the NFL when every team you play has almost a star corner, or a star safety? Something back there is going to stop you from catching the ball. So I can see why some of these guys are iffy. And one guy that I personally think is a first round talent but won't get drafted is KJ Hamler. It's disrespectful that some of these other receivers, I mean, you're telling me just to my face that Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State is better than KJ Hamler?
It's pretty good, but no.
It's not even close, right? I mean, and you're telling me Laviska Shenault from Colorado is better than KJ Hamler?
To me, this is, and look, it's not the same exact thing, but this is one of those. I'm going to compare it to the Jordan Love argument for the reason why he's going so high. It's the same reason that everyone has Laviska Shenault going so high. I mean, look at this guy's stats. First of all, this is a whole different tangent, by the way. But I mean, only 764 yards and 4 touchdowns this past season. I get 764 yards. That's a ton, but get out. There's no reason that should be first round talent. I think that there's a good chance he is taken in the first round, but I don't know.
I don't know.
I get that he's been injured. But whatever.
Yeah, he has injury history. But, I actually was just thinking, I'm going to stick with my mock draft. I'm going to go with, I had 6 being taken. I want to go with 6. I don't know why I would go against my mock draft. I'm going with 6, but I really wish that KJ Hamler would be taken, man. I personally think KJ Hamler will last longer in the NFL than CeeDee Lamb.
Well, I guess, I mean, they're 2 different kinds of receivers too, though. I mean,
one played in a real conference and has a future, and the other one played in a BS conference and will be out within 3 years.
That is just not what I was talking about at all. What I was talking about is that one's a slot receiver, but if you want to take that angle, that's fine. Let's do that. Man, this is nuts. Real conference. That is disrespectful.
Can you name? Okay, so let's just go through here. Let's just use Klatt's mock draft. Let's just use anyone's mock draft. How many secondary defenders are being taken from the Big 12?
None, because there's no defense.
Yeah. How many? Okay, you know what? Let's not even close it down that much. How many defensive players, any position on defense, is being taken from the Big 12?
This is rude right now. If anyone from the Big 12 was listening, we're sorry.
One, Brandon. I'll go ahead and answer for you. It's one, and it's Kenneth Murray on the same team as CeeDee Lamb. So it doesn't even matter. He didn't even have to play against Kenneth Murray.
Okay. Whatever. It's fine.
And you look at KJ Hamler, there's 2 players being taken in the top 3 that he had to go against.
Oh my God. Yeah, fair.
2 in the top 3.
I get what you're saying. You sound so angry right now. What's going
on? I am so angry because everyone's so high on this kid. I don't understand why they're high on him. I've watched the film. Yes, he's so explosive, but he's playing against kids that would not start on other teams in the secondary. They're standing flat-footed playing press coverage on him when they know they can't stop him.
Yeah, fair.
And then half the time, half his highlights are Jalen Hurts rolling out of the pocket, holding the ball for 15 seconds, and the defenders are passing out because they're playing in Oklahoma in August, and the play's lasting way longer than it should, and CeeDee Lamb's just running around in circles.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't get behind it, man. I don't think he's going to make it. And this is no disrespect to him. I know I sound upset. I'll hope for the best. If CeeDee Lamb makes it, that's great. I'll eat my words, but I just don't think he's worth a top 12 pick. And there's teams that apparently I've read some insiders saying that some teams have a top 5 grade on him. Are you kidding me? Top 5?
Come on. I mean, I've seen a lot of outlets say that he's the top receiver in the draft, and that's absurd. I get that he's good. I don't know. I mean, I think I had him as second on my list, but you can't do that to Jerry Jeudy. Don't do that to Jerry Jeudy right now.
No, man. Some of the guys, this bad radio again. If you have internet service, please just look up some of the just highlights of Jerry Jeudy running routes. His route running is so pristine, so flawless, so controlled. Just he is the best route runner I've seen in multiple drafts. It is something beautiful to watch. And to me, he's a better route runner than CeeDee Lamb. He is more reliable than CeeDee Lamb. He's a better blocker than CeeDee Lamb, more physical than CeeDee Lamb. And I think he's an all around better wide receiver. The only thing CeeDee Lamb has on him is straight line speed. But guess what, guys? Straight line speed does not matter. It is all about the quickness and agility, and Jerry Jeudy can hang with CeeDee Lamb any day of the week.
Right. Right. For sure.
And the last thing before we wrap this episode up, it's ridiculous that Justin Jefferson isn't getting more respect.
Oh, preach, dude. Go ahead. I like this.
No, like you're the LSU fan, you can add on after, but Justin Jefferson looks like an all-around better wide receiver than CeeDee Lamb. It's my hatred, not hatred, my take on CeeDee Lamb isn't because I think CeeDee Lamb is trash. I think it's more there are some elite wide receivers in this class. I mean, Jerry Jeudy has generational talent, in my opinion. I think he has potential, if everything comes together, to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver one day. I think Henry Ruggs is outstanding. And Henry Ruggs and CeeDee Lamb are very similar because they're both deep, fast, explosive threats. Henry Ruggs is more physical. He's a better blocker. He's a more pristine, clean route runner. Henry Ruggs is all around better wide receiver than CeeDee Lamb. Justin Jefferson is elite. Justin Jefferson, yes, might not have been the best wide receiver at his school, but that's not fair because Jamar Chase, if he came out in this draft, would be the number 2 wide receiver in this class, right behind Jerry Jeudy. And there's an argument that Jamar Chase can be equal to Jerry Jeudy because Jamar Chase is elite as well. And, you go past Justin Jefferson. I personally, just my take on it is I think Denzel Mims and KJ Hamler are both better wide receivers than CeeDee Lamb. And that it's due to just multiple things I just talked about. I think Denzel Mims is bigger, more explosive, and stronger than CeeDee Lamb. And I really think KJ Hamler has the all-around package. For me, I really don't see why people are overlooking him. But I'll let you talk more about Justin Jefferson because you pretty much studied this kid, I would say, because since you're an LSU fan. But based on film that I see, Justin Jefferson checks every box for me, and I don't understand why he's being disrespected.
There's no reason he should be. And the only reason I think he may be is because, he didn't coming into this season. I don't even know if he was, supposed to be drafted.
No,
he was a junior.
I think he had a 4th round grade last year, I believe.
Right. I mean, he's a junior this past season. He ends up going to the draft, and for a good reason. He's going to be a 1st round pick, obviously. But I mean, there were people all over the place saying, "Oh, he's coming back for his 4th year." And as much as I wish that were true, I mean, this kid needs to go make his money. But if you just want to look at stats alone, I mean, this past season, 1,540 yards, and he was not the top wide receiver on his own team. That's insane. He was splitting catches with Jamar Chase. I mean, the only other wide receiver you could give that type of credit to is Jerry Jeudy, because he's splitting catches with Henry Ruggs and with Jalen Waddle and with every other. I mean, Devontae Smith. I mean, every single other wide receiver. Just just whatever you want to call it. Alabama has a million wide receivers and a million good ones at that. But I mean, Justin Jefferson's sharing catches too. He's sharing catches with Jamar Chase, with Terrace Marshall Jr. I mean, you can name with Thad Moss, and he still comes out with 1,540 yards this past season. And is it because Joe Burrow's passing to him? Maybe. But you can't give all the credit to Joe Burrow here. You can't even give all the credit to Steven Sminger. You can't give it to Joe Brady. I mean, you have to give Justin Jefferson some credit at some point, because 1,540 yards doesn't just happen because you have a good coach or because you have a good quarterback. It happens because you're burning cornerbacks. You're burning safeties. Zach, I sent you a highlight. I think it may have been today of just, We saw
Yeah,
some
it was.
footwork,
It was
but
on Twitter.
this is bad. This is bad radio too. But I mean, and I'll, maybe we'll post it. Who knows? But just crazy footwork by Justin Jefferson in the national championship game. Just an up close view. The kid's good. Now, and what else can I say? He had 18 touchdowns this season. The kid's good.
And
He is severely underrated.
I just want to say this. We're talking about Judy, Henry Ruggs, Justin Jefferson. How many defensive players are being taken from the SEC every year, Brandon?
A million.
That might be an understatement, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, there's 5 in the top 18 of Klatt's mock draft.
Right. Granted, a lot of those are at LSU, but yeah, I mean, it still makes sense.
And there's 8 in the first round. There's as many SEC defensive players as there are total wide receivers.
Right. That's crazy.
That's really, really tough, guys. And this is why I do think that the conference you play in and the talent you play against matters. People, I don't know why people forget this. Every player on every NFL team was most likely one of the best players on their college team.
Yeah,
like they're not playing against kids who set the bench in college, guys. These are the best of the best players. I mean, and I really do think that the Big 12 is a weaker conference for defense, and that's why a lot of these players that come out of the Big 12. I mean, Brandon, how many busts at quarterback have we seen out of the Big 12?
A few.
You can't even count them on your hands, and really and truly, you don't. I personally do not think. I mean, Kyler Murray had a great year. Don't get me wrong. He had a great first year, but I want to see what happens next. Baker Mayfield had a real good first year, and we saw what happened with him. And on that note, guys, we're gonna end this episode. Over an hour content again. I still don't know how we're doing it. Guys, check out the podcast wherever you listen. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Big things on the way there. It just search the Blue Bloods. We are on there. You'll find our most recent episodes, interviews, etc. Website, thebluebloodspod.com. Big things coming there. Let's just say you guys are going to want to stay tuned on social media as well to figure out about these big announcements. Instagram at @the_Blue Bloods, Twitter at @the_Blue Bloods, Facebook at the Blue Bloods Pod. Follow us on all 3 of those to get the biggest announcements. And then you'll need to go to our website to do some more stuff. Announcements coming soon, guys. But episode next week, big things in the work for the draft. We'll also get in touch with y'all on that. But until then, guys, we out.